Johnson. Along with Jerry, I'm the co-president of thinkLA, and we're really excited to have all of you here to the first educational breakfast of the year, our mobile breakfast. This is one of our biggest turnouts. I think we have over 800 people here today, so thank you all for coming. It's awesome.
We are really excited about all of the speakers that have agreed to come speak with us today and all the content they brought, and none of it would be possible without our sponsors, so we definitely want to take a moment to thank them.
First of all, thank you to Eric and Jerry and everybody at thinkLA. When this came up about a month or two ago, the image that I had, can you speak at a breakfast? I thought, fine, it was like one of these tables. It's great. Here we are. This is what Tony Robbins must feel like. A totally new experience. And who knew? We're sleeping in New York. My goodness, what an amazing community in Los Angeles. You've got to talk about this more. People in San Francisco and New York aren't realizing how powerful this is. Where are we in the smartphone revolution? The good news is there are about 1 to 1.5 billion smartphones in the world right now, and there are 6 billion feature phones. Over the next several years, almost all of those feature phones will be replaced by smartphones. So there's huge growth yet to come. And I think it's only fair to brand the feature phones dumb phones. First, technology markets tend to accelerate in growth until they reach the 50% mark, then they tend to decelerate. And in the US and in other developed markets, we are past the halfway point in terms of penetration. The US is now about 55 to 60% penetrated. China is now the world's largest smartphone market. We'll give you a staggering statistic. Between last year and this year, China will add something on the order of 400 to 500 million smartphone users. So that's bigger than the entire population of the US. So let's talk about the tablet market briefly. It is less mature. It's a couple of years behind the smartphone market, even in the US. Consumers right now who have tablets tend to be older and more affluent than average. That will change because prices are coming down very fast in the tablet market, and this is where folks like Amazon are really starting to cash in on cheaper tablets. Mostly what people do with mobile devices, and this is including both tablets and smartphones, is they play games and they social network. Together, those are more than 50% of the time. What else do? They read news and they read books. They shop. Mobile is increasing as a percentage of the total e-commerce revenue. The greatest growth in terms of what people do on mobile is the stuff that you couldn't do without it. Instagram, Angry Birds. Angry Birds has been downloaded more than 1 billion times now. Instagram grew to 100 million people in 2 years. Staggering numbers. But the bottom line is, mobile is creating the opportunity for new applications, and it is extending the time that we interact with stuff. Mobile's used primarily during the commute, sometimes during the day as well. Tablets seem to be used in the evening on the couch and in bed. So that is extending the day. We haven't yet gotten to the point where we can get people when they're dreaming, but we're working on that. The amount of dollars spent right now are so much smaller than the amount of time spent on mobile, and obviously that will catch up. There are good reasons in this case for that gap between time and ad spend. The first, the screen is really small. If you're trying to advertise visually, that is a problem. Second, the mobile ad system, ecosystem right now is still mind-bogglingly complex and fragmented. Even a genius looking at it is going to be confused and annoyed by all the different decisions you have to make. That has to get cleaned up and changed. And then the last thing is that some of the early attempts with mobile advertising were just not pleasant experiences for the people who are supposed to be seduced by the ads and then go on and buy the product. This is a very intimate device. There is good news on the horizon. First is that we are finally really starting to see native mobile ads. Mobile ads that don't try to force a preconception onto a device, but instead observe how people are using it and fit into that. A couple other things to remember about mobile advertising. First, most of it is still search and display, as we always think of it, and Google is still very dominant. People talk about Google's dominance on the desktop, where they have 67% of search. In mobile, they have 95%. App downloads should soon hit 55 billion total, so it's an exploding market. You think about, as a publisher or trying to reach people, where do they spend their time on smartphones? Right now, they spend most of their time in apps, and the gap between that and mobile web continues to grow. App revenue is growing very fast, but it's still not that huge, and the reason for that is that it's still very much a free ecosystem. The folks who are making money on apps, it is freemium that they're doing it. You download the app for free, then they upcharge you later. That's in games is the big model. You've got to buy stuff. Oh, you like your pet dog. Wonderful. Would you like them to stay alive for a few more days? Cool. Have some food. Mobile is very much a platform market, and this is a technology term. The reason that you hear people in the technology industry fighting about this all the time and arguing about whether what matters at Apple. Does the profit matter or does the market share matter? The reason that the market share matters is because when you have a platform market where people are building services and applications on top of somebody else's product or service, market share is critical. Because if you're developing something, you want to develop for the most people possible. Apple got killed in the 1980s and 90s because they got surrounded by Microsoft's platform and ultimately made into a niche player where you had to be a religious zealot to prefer Apple because there was so much less software and so forth. It almost bankrupted the company. So the question now is the same thing going to happen? Is Apple still clinging so tightly to its premium market and its control freaky way where it wants to control both hardware and software? Is that going to doom the company? So that's really what the fight is about when you hear this. The answer is no. Apple has learned a ton from its mistakes. In mobile right now, it's a two-horse race between Android and Apple. Everybody else is toast. Android is winning in smartphones. It has come out of nowhere in the last 3 or 4 years and captured the majority of global market. Apple and Samsung doing very well, taking off tons of profits. This purple line, anytime somebody tells you that a technology company has built up an insurmountable position in a particular market, remember this line. This is Nokia over the last 3 years. Should you be mobile only? No. And here's the reason. When you really think about what it is when people talk about mobile, we've had this continuum for a long time of devices. It sucks to stare at a tiny screen all day. And if you actually have to input something, the keyboard's pretty good. People are hitting the same stuff from multiple different screens. Yes, if you're aiming primarily to people who are not at work and they're going to be mobile, then sure, go do mobile first and design for that if you want. But definitely not mobile only unless you are Instagram or Angry Birds. Think about the world as it is. Right now it is a 4-screen world, from the TV to the big desktop to the tablet to the mobile phone, and soon it's going to be a 5 or 6-screen world.
But I'm going to ask one question. How many of you sleep next to your smartphone? Please raise your hand. How many of you sleep next to both your smartphones? Come on. Come on. That device right there is the first device that frees us mentally. And we actually see that. As a cyborg, as she calls it, we use these exogenous appendages to help us as organisms adapt to new environments. And if you take a look at it, it's all about culture. 60% of us say that without my smartphone, I have no clue what's going on. So obviously, it's a big deal. But like Henry said as well, it's really the way we articulate and use each of the devices that we own and how it actually filters into our digital connected consciousness. Mobility and portability is actually creating new opportunities for access and interaction digitally. It's really creating this consistent consumption, this consistent line that is allowing the consumer to be on all the time, but marketers to connect as well. What we're finding is that in 2011, 49% said that we do this every day. In 2013, we've seen this huge growth of 63%. And it's really all around the 2 C's. It's all about communications and content. Now, this whole concept of big events, what's interesting is that it's really based on 3 principles. The first is that digital is starting to extend the things that truly matter to us. The second is that there's a narrative arc that is specific to each event. And something happens before, during, and after. There was 4 hours of Super Bowl content, and within that 4 hours, we watched 51 commercials, 51 minutes of commercials from 95 commercials and 45 parent sponsors. It's a lot of time. And what's interesting about the peaks that we actually saw within our network, they looked a lot like this. It usually happened in a continuum, a dichotomy that went from boredom to curiosity and utter elation. And so as publishers, we're learning, how do we optimize? My goodness, Alicia Keys, she was fantastic. And so many comments I saw about Beyonce's performance. You saw on our music property, we saw a huge amount and a huge spike in terms of traffic. Now, my marketing whiz friend, Steve Schuler, we were talking about how, wow, we were celebrating lifts of 300% in 2011. We saw 10x growth this time, and I'm expecting to see more, and that's what's exciting. Now, what's interesting is that It's all about the platforms that are going to be new, that are going to be bringing this together. And I'm going to reference another friend of mine. I'm sure you all have that friend where you could sit there and listen to him talk about the future, and he's usually right. That's what James McQuivey is at Forrester. I've actually had the pleasure of doing work with him before. And in 2010, he wrote a position piece about CTV. And in that piece of work, he said, owner enthusiasm is lacking. 61%, they don't even know what CTV is. But that obviously wasn't the premise or his thesis. He projected that by 2015, 43 million Americans are going to own a connected television device or have some sort of CTV device. Leichman Research last year said that it's actually closer to 38% today. So if you believe in the census, we are already at that mark 3 years early. And we're expecting to see another 25 million. According to this slide, 80% of owners of tablets and mobile devices, they want to connect across these devices. They want that big events kind of experience to actually flow. It's really about content interaction and communications. When you think about it, if it's about information, leave it on the 60-inch. When I'm doing polling and TV check-ins, that fluidity that exists needs to happen. And lastly, when it's about talking to my friends, leave it on the smart device. And so as we close, this is really what it's all about. Mobility and portability, they've really changed our capability to interact digitally. Multitasking is happening. It's a way of life. Let's capitalize on it together. Big events is really bringing it all together with content, and it's really all about the next generation, the next platforms that really recognize that it's bringing this all together. And lastly, let's change the conversation together.
What I'm going to take you through is I'm going to take you through some of our experiences as an ad buyer on mobile, things that have worked and things that have gone disastrously wrong, and they have, as well as talk to you about what we're looking for in the future. So 2007, which is a million years ago in the mobile world, we did our very first mobile execution on a show called Gossip Girl. And I don't know if you've seen Gossip Girl or know Gossip Girl, but Gossip Girl really was, it personified the digital age. Gossip Girl herself had a blog. They all had mobile phones that they carried in their hands everywhere. They wouldn't let them go. And it really, really did talk to this, what was going to be coming in the future. And our very, very first execution on mobile was something not in the device itself, because it was so hard to buy advertising at that time. We had to do something outside of it, and it was a little Gossip Girl mirror that you could put on your mobile phone. And what was so funny about this is we were so afraid that people wouldn't know what this is that we put it on cell phones or MP3 players, or you could put it on your locker too. And what we did is if you opt in as a viewer, when Gossip Girl sent people messages, whether it be Serena or Blair, you would get the same message that they got on their phone in the TV show on your phone in person. So a long, long, long leap from mere phones to this. And this actually, we worked with OMD on this, and we actually won a CAN award on this, which at the time was very, very progressive. People are doing this a lot now, but I think we were one of the very first to market on this. The next year was a huge miss. We had a show called Melrose Place, and I don't know if you guys know Melrose Place or not, but it's all about who's sleeping with who. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to take advantage of that, and we built a blog and a mobile unit called Share Your Scandal. And what you could do is you could type in and you could share your scandal. We thought that that was going to go mobile and is going to go wide and viral. It didn't. But what we did learn is just how creepy a lot of people were and how many scandals everybody had. And that brings us up to this year. And I'm not sure how many saw this, but this is something that we put in Entertainment Weekly magazine to launch the new season. What we did is we actually embedded a smartphone in Entertainment Weekly, and we attached our Twitter feed to it. So you could, on your smartphone, go into CW Twitter, write a note, and it would appear in the EW advertisement. So what we're doing is we are blending medias so that people that were reading this book could also tweet about it and send it out to their friends as well. The most surprising to us is we thought people would migrate to computers and tablets, but not necessarily mobile phones. Because there used to be a rule when I got in this business is You couldn't show anything more than 2 minutes of video on mobile because people wouldn't watch it. They would be turned off, they wouldn't watch it, and that's not true anymore. And in fact, what we're seeing is over 15% of our digital business is on mobile, and what's more important is that they are watching, on average, 69% view-through of our programming with fully loaded ads. So what was once seen as impossible is now happening and growing every single month. On outside of the box executions. This is an audience who wants something, they want it to be new, they want it to be fresh, they want it to be for them. So we are always looking for ways that we can bring to our audience something that is new, something that they've never seen before, something that has an oh wow factor. And we are famous for, if you guys who are advertisers or selling ads, if you have an idea that you think is crazy, that you can't sell anywhere else, come to us. If we love it, we'll do it. We've got to be there with the audience. We've got to let them do what they do. We're never going to change their behavior.
So, hopefully, most if not all of you are familiar with Call of Duty, but if you're not, heading into our launch last fall, it's an annual franchise, we had 3 record-breaking years as the top-grossing entertainment launch. Not the top-grossing video game launch, the top-grossing entertainment launch. Very high bar. We needed to top ourselves for the 4th year in a row and beat our prior record to $1 billion, which was 16 days. We needed to maintain or improve our share of market against a really tough competitive slate. We had a new Halo coming out. We had Assassin's Creed, Medal of Honor. We had the annual sports franchises like Madden or FIFA. It was the toughest slate yet. And we had to remain culturally relevant. It's very easy to hate the #1 game. We're an annual release. It's very easy to sort of be dismissive. Here's another Call of Duty. We have to fight all that. And we had to keep our core audience, 18 to 34-year-old men, engaged and passionate about the brand. So, what was different in 2012? Well, the way we changed the game most primarily is we moved the setting. It is now 2025. It is in the future. And one of the big perks of being in the future is for the first time, our audience got to interact with near-future weapons, like the stuff that you read about. Drones and quad rotors and robotics and all that stuff. We need to make that a big focus of our marketing. So now we're going to shift to the mobile story a bit. So why mobile for Call of Duty? Well, first, our core 18 to 34-year-old target audience really over-indexes for smartphone use, for tablet use. They were early adopters. They were heavy adopters. They were the first multi-screeners that we now see that more than 50% of Americans are doing. What were our challenges in using mobile? First, one of our big challenges is scale. We probably hear that a lot in mobile, right? Like, what advertising platforms have a lot of scale? If you need to sell $1 billion worth of something, scale really matters. We've also used marketing apps before, as I'm sure a lot of you had, and there's often a challenge in getting people to download marketing apps, right? How do you start from 0 users? How do you start from 0? So our solution was to do a partnership with Action Movie FX. For those of you that don't know the app, it was created by J.J. Abrams and Bad Robot, and it's basically like very basic movie-style CG that you can use in your life. You can take a picture of your house and you can blow it up. You can take a picture of your car and you can do a missile strike on it. It's a really cool app. It was getting a lot of traction. It had about 8 million active users at the time that we did our deal with them. It was 5-star rated by the App Store, and it was entertainment focused, which was really important for us. So we found a partner of scale. We timed it to come out 3 weeks before the game launched, and day and date with the launch trailer that we showed you. So, how did it perform? Or first, how did we promote it? We focused, as I said, on our community. Black Ops had 13 million Facebook fans. In total, we have 39 million Facebook fans, over 1 million Twitter followers. We used some paid media to activate it as well. Web and mobile search, some CPI networks, some affiliates. I think what we found with mobile and with other things related is that sort of synergy of paid, earned, and owned together really gives you the greatest effect. It's sort of 1 + 1 + 1 = 5. How did it perform? It performed much, much higher than even our most optimistic projections. We had 34 million weapons interactions in the launch period. Think about that. It was probably about 2 per person, so over 15 million times did people interact with those Call of Duty weapons. There were almost 6 million social shares coming out of that app. We got an additional 2 million trailer views on YouTube that we could track specifically back to the app. There was over 1 million advertising interactions. The most incredible thing was the ROI. Like, people are always looking to ROI mobile. It was just about a penny for every interaction we got out of the app and about 5 cents for every social share. Like, you couldn't buy stuff in mobile at those rates. So clearly, as a mobile standalone promotional piece, it worked, but we could see its driver on our business, so we could really show that mobile increased our ROI for the year.
So what we're going to talk about, so you learned a lot of things about insights and adoption from various perspectives, from a research perspective, from Yahoo's perspective on what they see going through their properties, from what CW is doing to distribute, and from what Activision is doing in this space as well from a distribution and from a building as a mobile as a platform. Brands are asking what to do in mobile. And the one thing that we have to remember, mobile is not digital. The reason we say that, and this is kind of biased for Airwave at O&D's perspective, and I think this is not necessarily unique, but if you think about mobile and digital, you're going to start planning and running mobile as you do online. And you need to understand the nuances of mobile to understand that there are things now that you have to plan for, breaking the planning process and doing things differently. Edwin earlier asked how many people go to bed with it at night, but it's the first thing you check in the morning. It's the last thing you check at night. It's what you check all day long. You're waiting in line for something. You're never without that thing, and it creates this behavior for brands that all of a sudden you have to determine what's best for me, where do I reach my audience? And there are certain things in mobile now that are spiking more so than others. The mobile, in terms of use for retail, in terms of video consumption, in terms of social, are the biggest things that are moving right now in mobile. Do brands need a mobile strategy? I read somewhere that somebody had said that, saying that a brand needs a mobile strategy is kind of equivalent to saying somebody needs a PC or a laptop strategy, rather. And I don't necessarily think that's true. The reason why is that there are so many things about this device that are new to all of us, that didn't exist long before. This is mobile. This is mobile. It's a platform that has all of this functionality into it. The trick is determining for a brand what is relevant. What's relevant for my brand? What do I do, whether it be search, SMS, display, mobile sites? This is not, here's what every brand needs to do. It's a matter of determining what is capable in terms of reaching our audience. What do we pull in? Mobile is this unique platform that engages with other mediums. That's what's unique about mobile, is mobile connects a user to your TV product. It connects you through your out-of-home. It connects you to radio. It connects you to print. It has all this great functionality that we like to say can mobilize every medium if done properly. But as far as the mobile strategy, this is really the meat of it. And some people will say you can't have a mobile strategy. It puts mobile in a silo. And someone had mentioned earlier doing mobile only. We don't encourage doing mobile only in most cases. But what we do encourage is, in some cases, doing mobile first, and in other cases, doing mobile differently. Customers are in mobile every day, an average of 144 minutes a day, in-app 75% of the time, mobile web 25% of the time. It's imperative that you determine with the proper insights, what do they do? It's not when, it's not if, it's what. And then from there, understanding that the content has to be relevant. What's unique about mobile is that if you're a car dealership, if you're retail, if you're QSR, if you're hotels, if you're anything where I can put a geo-aware, which is just proximity kind of loosely defined around a place, or place-based, which is there's an event at the Lakers game, or there's a Lakers game going on, and I'm at the ESPN zone across the street. I want to bring people in. I'm going to then do it around that place at that time and pull people in via their mobile device. Or the geofence, which is setting that broader proximity. But the point is, the trend is going up for brands to bring this into their execution and to use it more frequently. And you should, because again, that's the relevancy of what people want. And then the last thing, the very, very last thing, again, adopt often. Make sure that you test early. Do not be afraid to step on a ledge and try a new piece of the mobile ecosystem, the landscape, if you will, the various pillars of mobile marketing. Measure success. Get away from that CTR mind frame, KPIs post-measurement, in-game or in-banner engagement through rich media. Measure effectively so clients can see how mobile works. Even if you're driving into retail, make sure you can tie it back to the source. Understand that mobile's not desktop. Again, don't just take assets and plug them into a 4-inch screen. Break the planning cycle, understanding that mobile needs a different way of looking at it compared to other media.